All right, so we're diving into Exodus chapter 14 today. It's a pretty dramatic story, right? The Israelites escaping Egypt. We'll be looking at the King James Version and some thoughts from Matthew Henry.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Get ready for chariot chases, a sea splitting in two, and some serious divine intervention.
It's an epic tale.
Hmm.
So the Israelites, led by Moses, they've just fled Egypt after all those years of slavery.
Right.
But Pharaoh, he realizes he's lost his workforce.
He's not happy about it.
No, not at all. And he changes his mind. He comes after them.
The text really emphasizes how hardened Pharaoh's heart is. He gathers 600 chosen chariots and sets off in pursuit.
Wow, 600. That's a lot of chariots. Talk about a high-stakes situation, right?
Yeah.
The Israelites are trapped between the Red Sea and this furious army.
Mhm.
It feels like a movie is about to start.
Yeah, it's a classic setup for a conflict. You can really feel the tension building right from the start. And it raises some interesting questions about Pharaoh's motives. I mean, is it just about getting his workforce back?
Well, the text definitely points to Pharaoh wanting his workers back, yeah. But it also hints at something bigger, like a deeper theme of God's power being revealed through Pharaoh's actions. What do you think about that?
It's a complex theological idea, but essentially, it suggests that God is using the situation to showcase his power and ultimately, his plan for the Israelites.
So Pharaoh's almost like a pawn in this much bigger divine game.
Yes, exactly. His actions, even though they're driven by his own will, they end up serving this higher purpose. Now, imagine you're one of the Israelites for a moment. You just escaped slavery. You're finally free. And then you look back and see this massive Egyptian army coming right at you.
Oh, man. I can't even imagine that feeling of dread. It's no wonder the Israelites panicked. The text says they even questioned Moses, regretting that they ever left Egypt. I mean, who wouldn't in that situation, right? They're looking at certain death, either from the Egyptians or being lost in the wilderness.
It's a raw human reaction. Even though they've seen plagues, miracles, fear, and doubt, it still grips them. It reminds us that even when we've seen amazing things, doubt can still creep in, especially when we're faced with danger. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I'm faced with big challenges, fear and doubt, it can definitely cloud my judgment.
So how does Moses respond to all of this? Because the Israelites are basically having a meltdown.
Well, Moses, he responds with powerful words. He tells them to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He assures them that God will fight for them.
Those are fighting words. It speaks volumes about having faith, even when everything seems hopeless.
It's a crucial turning point in the story. It shows that this isn't just about a physical escape. It's about learning to trust in a power that goes beyond human understanding. Yeah, it's like he's saying, hold on tight, everyone, because we've got a secret weapon, and now we arrive at the moment everyone has been waiting for, the parting of the Red Sea. So how does this incredible miracle unfold? Does God just snap his fingers?
It's a bit more dramatic than that. The text describes God instructing Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea. Then a powerful east wind blows all night, dividing the waters, and and it creates this path of dry land for the Israelites to walk through.
This is it. This is the moment we came for. Can you imagine the scale of this event? It's a visual spectacle unlike anything else.
It's one of the most iconic moments in all of Scripture. Yeah, it represents this ultimate divine intervention. Imagine walking through this huge corridor of water with walls of water towering on either side.
Wow, what an image. But hold on a minute. The Egyptians with their chariots, they're still hot on their trail. What happens next? Do they just give up? Or do they try and follow the Israelites through this parted sea?
Oh, they try. They're emboldened by those chariots, and they charge right into the parted sea.
That seems like a pretty bad idea. What happens to them?
Well, God sees what's happening and he intervenes. He throws the Egyptian army into complete disarray, takes the wheels off their chariots.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah, they're stuck, they're panicking, probably feeling a little embarrassed at that point. But it's a real turning point. It really shows God's protection of the Israelites.
That's quite a reversal of fortune. One minute they're in hot pursuit, the next they're, well, stuck in the mud, literally. So what happens next? Do they just surrender?
Well, as the sun begins to rise, Moses stretches out his hand again, and the waters come crashing back, swallowing the entire Egyptian army.
Wow, that's intense. A powerful image. And the Israelites, how are they reacting to all this?
They are in awe. The text says they're filled with both awe and fear of God. And this experience, it strengthens their faith in God and Moses. It solidifies their identity as God's chosen people. And it's a really powerful reminder of God's protection, his faithfulness.
I can only imagine witnessing that firsthand. Talk about a faith-building experience. It really makes you think about what it means to have faith, especially in the face of, seemingly impossible odds. Now, I know we have some fascinating insights from Matthew Henry's commentary to add to this already epic story. What stood out to you?
Well, Matthew Henry, he really dives deep into the motivations behind Pharaoh's pursuit, and he points out that God is using Pharaoh's actions to ultimately fulfill his own plans.
Right. He even uses the phrase, God will be honored upon Pharaoh, that's a strong statement.
Yeah, it really is. It suggests that even Pharaoh's defiance, his attempt to thwart God's will, it actually serves to highlight God's power and authority.
That's such an interesting perspective. So it's not just about Pharaoh being a bad guy, but his actions playing a part in this much bigger story.
Exactly. Henry also emphasizes that, even though the Israelites have witnessed so many miracles, they still struggle with fear and doubt, just like we all do sometimes.
It's so relatable, right?
Yeah.
Even when logic tells you things will work out, it's still hard not to give in to that fear when things look, bleak.
Speaking of which, Matthew Henry had a really interesting interpretation of the parting of the Red Sea. He saw it as the symbol of baptism and the conversion of souls.
Yeah, that's one of the ways he connects this Old Testament story to the broader Christian narrative. The Israelites passing through the parted waters, leaving their old life behind. It can be seen as this metaphor for spiritual transformation.
It's like they're literally walking through a symbolic washing away of the past. And on the other side, they're reborn, so to speak, as a people devoted to God. Henry also, he reminds us how important it is to trust God, particularly in challenging times.
Which is, of course, a major theme of the Exodus story.
Right. He sees the Israelites' eventual deliverance as proof of a power of faith, even when things seem hopeless.
So even when we're feeling like we're drowning in our own personal Red Seas, we should remember there's always hope.
Always.
Yeah.
There's always a chance for deliverance, a way through, even if we can't see it at the moment.
Okay, so we've got Pharaoh, driven by his own desires, but ultimately serving a divine purpose. We've got the Israelites working through their fear and doubt, but eventually finding their faith deepened by this incredible display of God's power.
And we've got Matthew Henry providing a deeper layer of meaning, connecting this ancient story to these universal themes of spiritual transformation and the power of trust in God.
This deep dive has really lived up to its name. It's amazing how a story that happened thousands of years ago can still be so relevant to our lives today.
It's the power of Scripture, isn't it? These stories, they speak to these timeless human experiences, fears, hopes, and that search for meaning that we all share. It takes a little digging, a deep dive like this, to really appreciate the layers of wisdom in these ancient texts.
So we've covered the main events of Exodus 14 and some of Matthew Henry's insights, but what really resonated with you in this story? What stood out the most?
Well, for me, it's the image of that pillar of cloud,
Oh.
separating the Israelites from the Egyptians. It's such a powerful visual, right? This representation of God's protection.
Yeah, it's like this tangible barrier keeping them safe from harm.
Exactly. It reminds me that even when we feel surrounded by darkness or danger, God is always there providing that shield of protection.
It's like having a security blanket of divine power, you know? Knowing that no matter how scary things get, you're not alone.
Exactly. And it highlights this contrast between darkness and light, right? The Egyptians, they're engulfed in darkness, which symbolizes their ignorance and opposition to God's will, while the Israelites, they're guided by the light of the pillar of cloud, representing their faith in God's presence.
Wow, I hadn't thought about it that way before. It really adds another layer of symbolism to that scene.
Yeah, it shows how God's presence can light our way, even when we're surrounded by darkness and uncertainty.
So it's not just about physical protection, but spiritual guidance as well.
Yeah.
What else struck you as we were, unpacking this story?
I keep coming back to the Israelites' initial reaction when they see the Egyptian army. They immediately panic.
Yeah, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction to revert to fear and doubt when when facing this impossible situation.
And I think we all do that, when things get tough, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture, get caught up in our immediate
It's
fears.
like that fight or flight response kicks in and our brains go into survival mode.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how Moses responds. He doesn't get mad at them. Instead, he offers this reassurance and encouragement.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, "Hey, I get it, you're scared, but trust me, we've got this."
Exactly. And I think there's a lesson in that for us too. We need to remember that we're not alone.
Mm.
We have a God who is always with us, a God who's bigger than any problem we face.
Absolutely. But maybe the point isn't that we have to handle it all on our own. Maybe it's about learning to rely on God's strength, not just our own.
So it's less about being strong enough to face our fears and more about surrendering to a power greater than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about trusting that even when we don't know the way, God does, and he'll guide us through, even if it means parting a sea or two along the way.
Yeah, that's an inspiring thought to hold on
Yeah.
to, especially when we're, facing our own Red Sea moments. It strikes me that sometimes we create our own Red Seas, the walls we build up in our minds.
Oh, that's a great point. You mean the fears we allow to paralyze us, the doubts that keep us from taking that leap of faith?
Exactly. So maybe part of this parting the waters miracle is about recognizing those limitations we place on ourselves and having the courage to break free.
And that takes faith, doesn't it? Faith in ourselves, faith in something bigger than ourselves. Just less like the Israelites had to trust Moses and ultimately trust God to lead them through. We talked earlier about how God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and Matthew Henry, he suggests this was to magnify God's glory through the ultimate victory.
Right. And he also points out that even in Pharaoh's defiance, we see a glimpse of God's mercy. God gives Pharaoh multiple chances to change his mind, to let the Israelites go free.
Yeah, it adds another layer to the story, doesn't it? It's not this simple battle of good versus evil. It's about the complexities of the choices we make and this constant interplay between free will and divine intervention. Think about your own life. Are you allowing fear to harden your heart, or are you open to trusting in something beyond what you can see and control?
That's a powerful question to consider. And before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on one more insight from Matthew Henry. He interprets the Red Sea crossing as this symbol of baptism. The Israelites leaving their old lives behind and stepping into something new.
Ah, yes, that beautiful metaphor of spiritual cleansing and rebirth. The Israelites, they weren't just escaping slavery, they were entering into this new covenant with God.
And that connects back to what we were talking about with true freedom. Maybe true freedom isn't just about our circumstances, but about an internal transformation,
Yeah.
a shedding of old fears and limitations as we embrace a life guided by faith.
It's about stepping out of what's familiar and comfortable, even when it feels terrifying, and trusting that something amazing is waiting on the other side.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Exodus 14, it's clear this story is so much more than just an ancient tale. It's a reminder that faith is powerful, human nature is complex, and it's always possible to find true freedom, both inside and out.
It's a story that encourages us to look inward, confront our fears, and consider where we might need a little Red Sea parting in our own lives.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the dramatic escape to the symbolism and theological insights. I hope this deep dive gave you some new perspectives on this incredible chapter of the Exodus story.
And perhaps even spark some thoughts about what freedom, faith, and trust mean to you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember, sometimes the most incredible journeys start with a single step of faith.